Alright, ladies and gentlemen, this is a little bonus episode that we think you might like. This is
very, very, very exciting what we've got to tell you,
It is. This is actually a big deal, because today we would have hit 50,000 subscribers.
Well, we say that, we don't actually know yet.
No, we do. We can do the math. We've hit 50k subscribers.
We don't know that.
Okay, ignore Sam. We've hit 50k subscribers.
Okay, no, the reason I say this is because we're doing this video right now when we're at 49,500. YouTube apocalypse could happen and we could just lose 20,000 like that.
That's true.
When the Skill Up Exposed video comes out.
But so long as the trajectory continues, we've hit 50k. It's been an amazing year. We just want to say a tremendous thank you. It's been incredible.
It really
There's
has.
no way we could have predicted that this would have happened. So just a huge, huge thank you for that incredible support.
Thank you very much for putting up with me. Thank you for putting up with this boring bloke. I know he's great to watch when you're going to bed. His voice is just the most boring thing in the world. So guys, thank you very much.
It's very kind of you. The second thing is to say Merry Christmas. We're going on a break now for about 2 weeks. The Laymen are officially on holidays. We tried to go on holidays this week. We failed because there was just too much bullshit going on in the games industry. So we came back, we did some vids, we loved it. But we are on holidays for 2 weeks, so don't expect any videos then.
Only if we have big news.
Only if Andrew Wilson, CEO of EA, reveals himself finally to be Emperor Palpatine.
Yeah, I was just saying, Emperor Palpatine, or they find him actually shedding his skin. That's when we'll come back and actually tell you some juicy dank news. But apart from that, probably not.
Correct. Other than that, we're out of here. The last thing we want to talk about is a special little treat. We've been talking for a long time now about Christopher Lee. Chris Lee from Hawaii. He's in their state legislature there. He was the guy that got up and gave that amazing speech saying enough is enough, no more loot boxes, and that Star Wars was a Star Wars themed casino. He is really leading the charge against loot boxes, and we thought, you know what, would be pretty cool? We interviewed Chris Lee.
We never thought in a million years, because we were like, you know what, we'll send him an email. He may reply. And he was like, yeah, cool, let's do it.
And we're like, okay, I guess we need to organise this now. What should we ask him? So we did this interview. We really hope you guys enjoy. Chris Lee's a fantastic guy, just really doing amazing work. We're going to leave his channel in the description below. Go and check him out. Throw him some support.
Definitely.
Because while we are just sort of like circle jerking on YouTube, yelling into the wind, he's the guy that's actually like going to do some stuff about it. He's the one that's actually going to affect some real change. And like companies are really going to have to listen, because if he writes laws to stop them from doing this bullshit, then they have to comply. So he's doing the Lord's work over there in Hawaii.
There's only so much that our memes, our dank memes can do on the interwebs.
That's right.
We do need actual people to do actual things.
Exactly right. So so that's it. Anyway, enjoy the interview, guys. Hope you have a fantastic time. Have a great Christmas.
And we'll see you guys for Season 2 of Laymen next year. See you, fam.
We would have just tossed over live from the Laymen studio, which does not have good enough internet to be able to do this interview. We're doing it from our home. Here we are. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm absolutely thrilled to interview Chris Lee. Chris Lee is a representative from Hawaii. He has been someone that is at the absolute forefront of the fight against loot boxes. The way that YouTube channels are sticking it to big publishers for trying to rip us off. Chris Lee is the guy that's standing up from the legislative side, trying to make sure this doesn't happen there. He's doing incredible work at the moment. Chris, thank you so much for joining us. So awesome to have you here.
No, it's awesome to be on. Thank you so much for having me. And not that your guys' internet sucks. Ours sucks just as much. Our Wi-Fi is not working, so I'm doing this over my phone.
Right, nice.
Very nice. It looks very professional. Very professional.
Can we just say...
It's just me being lazy in our studio, so I have to set up stuff in my office.
Right, you can see the lazy background, just like you really could have put in a bit more effort, Chris. It just looks super unprofessional.
We actually just forgot our Australian flag.
We did.
That's the thing.
We should have brought that. First of all, really wanted to know the biggest question, the most important thing. You live in one of the most beautiful places in the world. It's perfect weather 24/7, all 365 days a year. Why the hell would you play video games in Hawaii? What the hell are you guys doing over there?
A beautiful summer, man.
Yeah, don't sell yourself short. I've been to Australia, I've been to Sydney, I've been to other places. It's exactly the same.
That's true.
That's true.
There's nothing to kill you here. I'm surprised you guys are still alive at this point.
The kangaroos and crocodiles are very dangerous.
Yeah, you know, the beach gets boring after a while. Frankly.
Sure.
But growing
up, we're not big beach goers, to be honest.
I can tell. Unless
I knew that was coming. I knew I set myself down. I knew it.
Chris Lee, as savage as he is, awesome. Much respect. Much respect.
No, I love you guys. I think like everybody, you know, we all grew up with stuff in our childhood that's really nostalgic, and one of those things that I look back on was my time in front of a console with friends, where you got your cardboard dividers in front of a screen.
Yes, yes.
you know, and I think that's been something that we all look back to, and I've since then been playing other kinds of games, but it's been a part of my life forever.
For sure.
100%.
For sure.
And what's just a quick thing? What was your favorite game on the good old Nintendo 64?
Oh, 64. Oh man, you're killing me here. There's two. There's two. Super Mario Kart 64.
Nice.
For sure. And the other one, GoldenEye.
Nice.
GoldenEye was a great game.
You're a man of excellent taste.
You're a man of great taste and culture, definitely.
What kills me though, I told Pierce Brosnan lives in Hawaii part-time. He works on a lot of issues with he and his wife. They get involved in like environmental stuff. It's fantastic. So I had dinner with them and had drinks with them once. I told him this.
Wow.
I was like, you know what? You were like my childhood hero. Not so much in the movies, but in this game. And he's like, well, let me tell you about that. And his whole thing is he doesn't give a. Hey, I'm not the word in his mouth, but the movies he loves, games. I think this is new territory for him.
Totally.
Get him involved.
That is so...
He should know about this.
That is so amazing. I cannot believe that you sat down and had dinner with Pierce Brosnan talking to him about GoldenEye. I mean, like, we've got some cool stories playing video games, but I think that's one of the best I've ever heard, man. Much respect.
No, but what we're going to do is, we'll get him set up on Twitch over here, playing a legit game of that. He can play himself.
God,
you guys
yes! How good would that be? That'd be amazing. That would get views, no doubt.
That would totally get views, 100%.
So, Chris, tell us, you know, this matter. You know, obviously, it's one thing to play video games. It's another thing to be a legislator. What was it that brought those two things together for you? What was it that made you feel like you needed to actually address the issue of gambling in video games rather than just say, well, that's not something I'm going to worry about. That's for someone else. That's someone else's problem.
You know, for years we've all seen this coming, right? We've seen the introduction of kind of predatory mechanisms and their growth from one title to another, and now they're pretty much everywhere. I think it's something that I only realized, I mean, honestly, in the last few months. I mean, since Battlefront was a thing that got to the level of conversation where it did people in our community, parents, and even a couple teachers reach out and say, hey, can you do something about this? And it didn't even click for me that we were in a place to do something until that happened. But once I realized, like, holy cow, you know what? There are people who have an obligation to pick up whatever tools they got and attack this issue. I think that's something that I feel an obligation to do. Because if not us, then who?
Yeah.
You know, if not now, then when? It's the classic political conundrum.
Sure.
And do you feel like it took something like Star Wars coming out?
Let me tell you the real reason. I'm a huge Battlefield series fan.
Right.
And there's another one coming out soon. We got to fix this thing before this happens.
So true. So true.
And do you feel like a game like Star Wars coming out was what you needed for something like this to really start rolling?
You know, I think it certainly helped in terms of bringing attention and focus from people who aren't big gamers. They don't really pay attention to these things. But I think this was ultimately inevitable, whether this game or the next or next year or whenever it might be, because it's such a huge public health issue at this point that psychologists and mental health experts and everybody out there, teachers and educators, are talking about that if it wasn't me, it would be somebody else. If it wasn't now, it'd be next year, and what this game is coming out. But I think having Star Wars attached to it definitely did bring a new level of scrutiny and just makes it easier to convey to people how widespread this is and how easy it is to access from, whether you're a kid or anyone else.
Sure. Hey, let's talk about your maiden speech on the loot box issue. Very important question we wanted to ask you was, when you dropped your "it's a trap" line, did you have to tell your staff in advance not to laugh and to keep a straight face, or was that a surprise to them as well? Like, did you guys organize that in advance? How did that go down?
You underestimate the power of my meme skills.
I don't think we do, Chris. I don't think we do.
You knew exactly what you were doing. You knew exactly what you were doing. And you gave us so much great material, so we thank you.
It was fantastic. But seriously, though, tell us about the reception to that speech. I mean, because that was a big moment. The games industry certainly picked that up. What kind of momentum came from that first moment where you got up on that stage and said, okay, enough's enough?
It was, I think, unexpected how widespread that got picked up. And this was really like a last minute thing. We had a handful of people that we've been talking to just to get information from the faith community and from, because they've been working on gambling stuff for a long time. from some mental health experts and so on, and a couple of friends who are gamers who said, you know what, if you're going to do something, let us help. And it turned into this press conference like 24 hours ahead of time. And we didn't really have a plan for next steps. We just wanted to put it out there and make sure that people understood what was going on and to see if anybody would bite so that there might be traction to actually do something. So I'm glad that people picked it up. You know, I think it's really thanks to folks like you guys and people around the country and around the world who started paying attention, started the conversation, that really, I think, made this what it is today and is giving us a chance to really change the industry in a meaningful way.
So tell me, what kind of tangible progress has been made since then? Because I know you've been really sort of on the phone, you've been grinding away, you've been talking to other legislators. I know you said you did a trip recently where you were chatting with other people about this in other jurisdictions. What kind of updates can you give us on the actual formation of legislation and how's that all going?
Yeah, so we've been all over the place, working in California, working in other states. I think that's step one, right? Really connect people with this issue, because for a lot of folks, this is brand new for them. But when it comes to legislation and next steps, that's always the question they ask. What do we do now, now that we know about this? And so we've got 4 bills here in Hawaii that we're working on, and they do a lot of things, but the gist of it is they create an age restriction for the kinds of content that may be available to especially minors who are psychologically, cognitively vulnerable to these things, according to experts. They require disclosure and transparency in odds of winning stuff, kind of like there's a big decision today by Apple, we can talk about in a minute, but similar to that, and then requires that when you're selling games up front, you know what? You got to disclose that these mechanisms are inside. So if you're a consumer or a parent, you just know. It's not something you have to guess about after the fact. And so these are the kinds of things that I think are pretty common sense, and legislators that I've been talking with, once they get through the educational component, they get it.
Right.
And it's the kind of thing that we've certainly seen before when it comes to gambling and tobacco and all the other addictive things that are out there that have been appropriately the subject of some small regulation. So I think it's been going well, frankly. But there's a long road ahead.
What's it like talking to some like 65-year-old politician, spent their life in the legislature, never played a video game in their life? What's it like explaining to them, by the way, there are these loot box things that you can buy in Star Wars and they make your characters more powerful and we need to make laws against them?
It's quite the cornucopia of responses. You have some guys who are like, I just did a video. I was talking to a couple guys on the phone, and one guy he doesn't even use a computer. I mean, he just doesn't. Everything runs through his staff. They print it out. They put it in front of him. And it blows my mind how anyone can operate that way in this day and age. But there are other folks. I mean, there's a guy I talked to who is, I think he's like 75 or 76. He's really wise.
Right. Very smooth, Chris. Very smooth. You should be a politician with language like that.
But he got it.
Yeah.
And I didn't even have to explain, because one of his staff had already been working on this issue and had been paying attention to what's going on. So when I called and they set up the call, he was already like, all right, tell us what we're going to do. And that was it. I didn't have to say a word. So I think there's a wide variety of initial responses, but at the end of the day, almost everyone we've spoken to, Republican, Democrat, conservative, liberal, wherever they are politically, understands the basic premise of this, and they all agree something should be done.
Right. So tell me, what about lobbyists? Have you been approached by any lobbyists to this point?
So I haven't yet.
Okay.
We've tried reaching out through, actually, even before we ever did our press conference, put a couple calls into some of the trade groups, the ESA and ESRB types, and we just never got any meaningful response. I think because at that point they probably didn't know how to respond.
Right.
But at this point, as the legislatures around the country and other governments around the world start to take this issue up, I expect there will be pressure. There's $20+ billion, just in this country alone, riding on these kinds of mechanisms. So there's no way they're going to sit back and say, yeah, we'll give that up. You take it.
So are you saying you reached out to the ESA and the ESRB and neither of them responded to you?
Yeah, we never heard back.
Wow,
that's went to like some intern and got filed away, but who knows? I think at this point, though,
that's so crazy.
You surprisingly, I've been working on a lot of issues, whether it's this one or do a lot of energy work and other things. And in the industry, there's not one single mindset in any one company. You have boards of directors that are infighting over direction, and I think that's probably the case here, where you have disagreements. Do we just strip away loot boxes and other things and go back to what was good, or do we just double down on this and satisfy our investors? There's probably no one consensus within these companies or in the industry, which is why you probably have a lot of slow-moving response. So I'm not surprised there, frankly.
Yeah. I think a lot of these companies are, built now, on this whole idea of the microtransaction market, and for it to be stripped away would just be a huge, devastating blow to these shareholders. So it's a situation where, it's not going to be an easy fight, I think.
Oh, I think so, but I do think even the companies recognize that something is going to have to change. I mean, even just EA's response with the microtransactions and Battlefront. I mean, that's only one game in one limited circumstance, but inevitably they're going to have to find better ways to do these things. That's the whole point of this entire exercise, right? How do we engage people to push the industry to go where we want it to go?
So if we get down to some of the specifics, is it possible that Hawaii will pass legislation sort of unilaterally, so to speak, or will you only do it in concert with other jurisdictions? Because the risk is that Hawaii does its thing, and then, it's like, oh, well, EA's like, oh, well, I can't sell my games in Hawaii now. No big deal with that. Do you know what I mean? Like, what's the plan there with regards to when you plan to drop this and how you plan to work with others?
So we are coordinating with other states on specific bills and things, and we want to ideally drop the same legislation and make the same push at the same time, because that's how you do it, right? I mean, we're pretty small here in Hawaii as far as the market goes, but when you start adding in, other big states, California, Washington, who knows what else, New York, then it becomes a real thing.
Sure.
So barring that, I mean, we're still prepared to move on our own if we need to, and I think there's definitely, I think, a bunch of folks in the legislature who want to see things move, and the secret about politics is you can get pretty much anything you want done if you're willing to give away credit for it. So I'm pushing all these issues to my colleagues and saying, you know what, you guys want to take credit for protecting families in the community or what have you, have at it. It's yours. And so I think even apart from me, I'm not the only one here that's working on this issue. There are other people working on it too. And I think that's something that's important to keep in mind.
Well, look, if you need anyone else to help on that fight, we're happy to come to Hawaii. Like the Hilton is fine. We're happy to stay there. Waikiki, no problem.
First class, that's cool. Whatever.
Just let us know. We'll be right there, man. Totally, no question.
We're gonna get you guys on a surfboard.
On what? On a surfboard. It's true. So I wanted to talk about some very big news today that happened with regards to Apple. Now, the App Store is a very, very big deal. It's the center of the mobile games market, and today Apple announced that any game that appears on the App Store that has loot boxes needs to disclose the odds of receiving certain items within those loot boxes. So what are your thoughts on that, given how big a player Apple are in the market?
I think it's game changing. I think this is the kind of thing that we've been trying to push for as a community. I mean, China certainly had done its thing earlier on, trying to get odds disclosed semi-successfully, and I think now that Apple's joined the mix, everyone else is going to have to fall in line, because this is something that all the game developers, if you want to go through the Apple Store, have to account for, so you might as well do it across all platforms.
For sure. Yeah, it is very exciting. It does seem like a real shift. I guess one of the complaints or feedback areas that we certainly receive in our comments about this is like, you don't want government legislating nothing. You never want government in your face about any of your business, right? What's your response to anyone that says that government has no business legislating on this front, and we should leave it to the likes of Apple to self-regulate?
We've seen this industry grow, regulating itself, and it's taken us to this place we're at right now. And that's not going to change unless we as a community help force it to change. And one of those tools is the threat of government intervention. But more than that, even if the industry steps up to the plate and says, you know what, all right, loot boxes, we'll be transparent about it and all that. When it comes to those kinds of games of chance, ensuring some basic accountability and transparency, so posting of odds and disclosure and that sort of thing, is uniform across every industry. It's not government intervening saying, do it this way or anything like that. It's saying, if you're going to do it, just provide us with some basic transparency, and accountability for the general public so that your people aren't getting ripped off and they know that you're giving them a fair shake. Because there are clearly companies out there, not only in this industry but others, and certainly games now, that have taken advantage of people where you got like a 0.0 whatever odds of actually winning something.
Sure.
And I think that's the kind of thing that no matter where this goes, we have to sort out, and we have to make sure people aren't going to end up getting screwed by that sort of thing.
So are you saying that it's actually less a case of government inventing new legislation? It's really about, well, that legislation already exists elsewhere when it comes to gambling and games of chance. We're just trying to make sure that this also applies in the same way here with video games.
Yeah, I mean, it's not even about the government regulating video games. It's about the government ensuring that gambling mechanisms and other things that are taking advantage of a lot of people are fair and not exploitative to the extent that it's actually hurting people out there.
Yeah.
And that's the bottom line. I mean, anybody can build a game these days without those kinds of mechanisms, which, you know, I've got a few on my phone, I've got a few on my computer. But there also is a time and place for those that some people want to play. But if they want to play, great, go do it. Just make sure it's done in a fair and transparent way so that people know what they're getting into.
For sure, for sure. Well, obviously, the legislation side of things is one of it. What can people do, besides starting their own successful YouTube channel, obviously, what can people do to join this fight and actually make their voices heard and actually apply pressure to get an outcome on this front?
So I think people can actually legitimately make a huge difference here. And, you know, we can write to EA and Activision and some of the other companies all we want, but they have a vested interest in saying, thank you very much. And by the way, here's another loot box. Maybe you open this as well.
The dawning.
You want. Right.
Yeah.
But for us, you know, it's reaching out not so much to those companies, but to the governments and to the elected officials that represent all of asking them to place pressure upon these companies to change their ways, because that's when the companies will start to listen, when they're faced with a threat of regulation. And that's what this is all about. If we can raise that discussion, we may not have to intervene and tell them how to do things. Maybe they'll be willing to do it themselves. But at the end of the day, so far, they haven't been. And that's why it's important that people keep speaking out, because this is a battle that will be indefinite. Eternal vigilance, you know, is the price of democracy and freedom and all of that. And in this case, it's the price of good games and better games going forward. We've got to keep the community together, active and on it.
Totally agree.
100%.
Well, look, it's pretty awesome to have someone like you in the fight that gets it.
Totally.
The biggest fear is that, you know, some politician that doesn't even use a computer gets on this issue because he thinks he can score a few points on it and does a whole lot of damage in the process. But, you know, to speak with you, to hear about you playing games and loving what this industry is and fighting for it on behalf of, you know, gamers everywhere is a pretty awesome thing. So huge thank you to you for the work that you're doing. It's just awesome to watch. Thank you so much for sitting down with us today. We sort of like fangirled a little bit out when we sort of like, well, we'll ask him to interview. He's not going to say yes. He's not going to say yes. We're like, oh my God, he said yes. We're going to interview Chris Lee. So dude, thanks so much. It's pretty awesome to chat with you today.
The fanboys all on this side over here. But let me just say one thing. Here's that point, and this is really important, because I think a lot of people are anxious about government in general, especially today with the governments that we have, you know, at some of our federal levels in some countries. But it's been amazing talking with other legislators, because there are so many more people out there who are our age, who get it, who have grown up in this industry as a consumer, playing games their whole lives, and now they're in positions of authority to be able to do something about it. So sure, there's going to be a couple of the old guys who don't even know what a computer is, and they're always going to be there. But there are many more people today, unlike 20 years ago, the last time you had a big fight over video games come up. There are people who get it today that would never let it get to that place. And it's me speaking out quite a bit online lately, but for every me, there's like, 20 or 30 other people.
Sure.
We have 5 other full-time, dedicated hardcore gamers in our own legislature here in Hawaii that have taken interest on this. And it's like that in every state at this point. So I'm optimistic about the way things are going. And I think that as long as people stay engaged, government's not going to do what people don't want it to do. The bottom line, everybody wants to get reelected. And that's why...
Except Ajit Pai.
It's so important.
Yeah. Yeah.
Save that for another one. We got I got some. I wish I could share it right now. We have some awesome ideas for this, but we'll save it.
We will. You have a fantastic Christmas. I'm sure it's pretty hard over there to be enjoying that perfect weather. I tried to go to Hawaii for this Christmas break, but it was like completely booked out, so I couldn't even get a hotel room at this time of year. So I hope you have a fantastic break, mate.
Oh man. No, you know what? You guys want to come? If you guys want to come, let me know. We'll hook it up. We want good people on the island.
How good's that?
We'll get you on a surfboard.
That's right.
I know Sam has a girlfriend now, but some friends you should meet.
Chris Lee trying to hook us up. Oh yeah, that's dangerous territory. Dangerous territory.
That's definitely going in.
Yeah, no, he's a great guy. You'd love him.
And that's how we finish.
That is absolutely how we finish, Chris Lee.
Oh, you're the best, man. Thank you so much.
Take care, man. I'll see you later. Bye-bye.
Man.
All right. Take care, guys.